Well, Oregon is known for its affinity with Bigfoot, but another state is spiraling over a possible sighting. Someone says they saw the legend in Volatile, Connecticut. The Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization is dedicated to documenting credible encounters with the creature, and the group says the sighting happened the morning of July 5th. They say the eyewitness account was so detailed, researchers gave it their highest level of credibility. But some neighbors aren't so sure.
You know, it's probably a guy running around with a costume on. Who knows?
Some non-believers say with the number of cameras nowadays, one should have accurately captured a picture of Bigfoot by now. The amount of cameras we have these days, and you're telling me not one clear shot of Bigfoot. I don't think Bigfoot is smart enough to know, like, hey, it's 2026, there's cameras everywhere. Like, I don't think he understands that. So
hold on. Bigfoot's large, agreed? Big, strong, agreed? I'd be careful with insulting Bigfoot if I were you. You said he wasn't smart enough to...
Hey, maybe he is watching.
You are a
Loch
believer?
Ness Monster.
Okay, well, the world famous Bigfoot may have been spotted traveling across I-80 earlier this week.
Some hikers didn't realize they had filmed something until hours later, when they were back home, scrolling through their photos in better light. That's when they saw it, standing in the trees behind them, tall, upright, watching. The footage you're about to see has been quietly disappearing from the internet, and once you understand why, you'll never look at a forest the same way again. Something in the shot. On November 24th, 2025, a man named Kyle Campbell was driving along a remote logging road in British Columbia. The light was beginning to drop. A thin mist clung to the cedars on either side of the cut, and the road itself was empty in both directions. The kind of stillness only logging country produces after the equipment has gone quiet for the day. Campbell had driven these roads before. He expected nothing more than a long, slow descent back toward the main highway. Then he braked. Standing among the trees was a tall, upright figure, completely still, facing the road. His first instinct was hunter. Someone in dark clothing waiting out an animal, maybe a poacher he wasn't supposed to see. But the figure wasn't holding a rifle. Its arms hung at its sides, and the shoulders were too wide for any hunting jacket. It wasn't a bear either. A bear would have already turned. This thing simply stood, the way something stands when it has been doing so for a long time and intends to keep doing so. Campbell rolled the phone up against the windshield and recorded for several seconds before his hands started shaking. The figure never shifted. It did not look toward the truck. It did not lean forward. It held its position as if the road and the vehicle on it were beneath its attention. What unsettled him most, he would later say, was not the size. It was the patience. Anything alive that stands that still for that long is either dead or waiting. He could see no breath in the cold air around its head. No rise and fall at the chest, no twitch of the hands. The forest behind it was equally still. No birds called, no branches moved. The cedars on the far side of the cut absorbed sound the way wet cloth absorbs water, and the only thing Campbell could hear inside the cab was the idle of his own engine. He did not roll the window down. He did not get out. He shifted into reverse and backed up the logging road for almost a quarter mile before he felt safe enough to turn around. No additional footage or updates were ever shared. Back in 2009, in the forests of Utah, a hiker captured a photograph that has never been fully explained. What matters about the image isn't its clarity, it's the year. AI image generation did not exist in 2009. No apps, no filters, no generative models.
Do you see that? I'm afraid. Oh my God. Oh my God.
The tools that now allow strangers on the internet to fabricate convincing creatures from a text prompt were still more than a decade away. Whatever appeared in this photograph could not have been created. It had to have been there. The hiker had stopped at the edge of a clearing late in the afternoon. The light was failing. He raised an early phone camera, the kind that struggled with anything dim or distant, and took a single image of the tree line. He didn't see anything unusual at the time. The clearing was quiet. He remembers the smell of pine sap and damp earth, the temperature dropping fast the way it does in high desert canyons once the sun drops below the ridge. He took the photo, lowered the phone, and walked back to his vehicle without looking twice. It was only later, on a larger screen, that the shape resolved itself. Broad shoulders, a rounded head set low between them, thick legs planted just inside the cover of the trees. The proportions were wrong for a person. The stance was wrong for a bear. What sat with him, he later wrote, was the position relative to where he had been standing. The figure was angled toward him, not toward the clearing, not toward the trail, toward the man with the phone. The hiker did not return to that clearing, and he refused for years to identify the location. The final case in this chapter came from a viewer submission to a cryptid-focused Instagram page. A trail camera had been mounted along a game trail in Ocala National Forest in Florida. Its purpose was unremarkable. The landowner wanted to track deer movement on his property and time his hunting season accordingly. The camera fired automatically on motion. For weeks, it captured nothing but raccoons, the occasional doe, and wind shifting the branches. Then, one frame returned a figure. It stood fully upright behind a fallen tree, fur-covered, broad across the chest, its arms low. The trunk in the foreground put a known measurement into the image, and against that reference, the figure was enormous. The top of its head cleared the height of the snapped trunk by a wide margin, and the trunk itself was the size of a full-grown longleaf pine. No wild apes live anywhere in Florida. No native primate of any kind. The owner described the area as remote enough that the nearest road was more than a mile of dense palmetto and pine away, the kind of country where the air is thick with mosquitoes after dusk, and the only sound is the dry rasp of insects in the brush. Whatever had been photographed was either an incredibly dedicated hoaxer who had hiked into the swamp at night to pose for a camera he had no way of knowing was there, or something the camera was never meant to capture. The owner reviewed the timestamp. It was just after 3 in the morning. He took the camera down within a week and stopped hunting that section of his land entirely. In each of these cases, the witness saw the creature. What comes next involves witnesses who didn't, until the footage gave them away. They were already observing. The Shaver Lake incident stands out. In 2024, a hiker walked a quiet trail through the California foothills near the lake. The ground was damp from recent rain, and sunlight cut through the canopy in long, soft beams. He spent the afternoon fishing, relaxed, completely off guard. At one point, he set his catch against a rock and took a quick photo. It felt like nothing. Just another casual shot. That evening, going through his photos at home, under better lighting, everything changed. Deep in the tree line behind him, barely visible but clearly upright, stood a figure. It was positioned within natural cover, completely still, watching from roughly 40 yards away. Some analysts later suggested the posture resembled a female primate holding an infant at the hip. Others argued it was just branches and shadow overlapping in a deceptive way. But one thing wasn't disputed: the implication. Whatever that shape was, it had been there the entire time. It watched him bait his hook. It watched him hold up his catch. It chose not to reveal itself. It made a decision to stay hidden, observing him without his awareness, until a photograph exposed its position hours later. He never went back to that trail. A similar pattern repeated with a carpenter, hiking alone through a Pacific Northwest forest. He had mounted a backward-facing GoPro to the top of his pack to log scenery. He walked for over an hour through old-growth fir, the ground soft with moss, the air cold and faintly sweet with cedar. He saw no one. Later, at his kitchen table, he scrubbed through the footage and saw it. A wide-shouldered figure leaned out from behind a tree trunk just enough to watch him pass, then drew itself back into cover the moment he was beyond it. It did not follow. It observed with the quiet patience of something that had done this many times. He uploaded the video and has not returned to that trail since. In 2022, a family hiking near a remote waterfall paused at the base to rest. Cold mist rose off the rocks. Children's voices echoed back from the cliff wall as the parents filmed the scene. Behind them, partially obscured by the falling curtain of water, a silhouette moved along the ridge. It walked steadily on 2 legs. Its torso was too broad for any hiker carrying a pack. By the time they noticed and stopped recording, the figure had already passed beyond the ridgeline. It had been moving along the cliff above them while they rested below, fully exposed and completely unaware. In 2023, the YouTube channel Into the Wild released time-lapse footage from a wildlife corridor webcam inside a Canadian national park. A machinery operator was clearing trails throughout the day. What the footage revealed was a matter of timing. The figure appeared only when the operator's back was turned, wide at the shoulders, positioned between two trunks, still enough to almost vanish into the snow behind it. In the very next frame, it was gone. It had withdrawn the instant there was a chance of being seen more clearly. That is not the behavior of an animal wandering into view. That is observation. The pattern is becoming difficult to dismiss. Cameras keep capturing things in remote wilderness that the people behind them never saw in real time. What comes next did not happen at a distance, and it was not discovered later in playback. It happened in front of the witness, close enough to hear it breathing. Subscribe now. The next footage in this video is the kind that makes people stop hiking alone. Face to face. The encounters that follow happened in shared space. No ridge separated witness from creature. No camera revealed what the eye had missed. These witnesses saw it directly, on the same ground they were standing on, close enough to read the swing of its arms and hear the weight of its feet on damp earth. In every case, the creature did not run. It did not hide. It moved through the witness's space the way a larger animal moves through a smaller one's, and the witness made the only decision available: leave, fast, and never speak of it casually again. On May 18, 2025, a man named Edward Henry was fishing at Plum Creek with his 12-year-old son. The air was calm, the water slow, the kind of quiet afternoon that feels completely safe. Then the brush across the creek began to crash. Edward first thought it was a deer forcing its way through the vegetation, but the noise didn't stop. It grew louder, heavier, more controlled. Something was coming toward the water with intent. Then it emerged from the tree line, a huge upright figure on two legs with arms hanging below its waist and shoulders broader than any man Edward had ever seen. It moved along the bank with a slow, rolling stride, as if the two people standing 30 yards away filming meant no more to it than the stones in the water. Edward recorded as much as he could. The creature never turned its head toward them. It didn't speed up. It simply continued at its own pace until the trees closed around it again. Edward glanced at his son. His son looked back. They packed up in silence. The Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization later examined the footage and labeled it credible, noting that the gait and limb proportions didn't match any known animal in the area. Some researchers have since described it as one of the clearest Bigfoot recordings in years. In early September 2024, a camper named Jack was on a fishing trip with his father in the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness. The region is remote in a way most people never experience. No signal, no nearby hikers. Only wind through the birch trees and the occasional crack of a branch somewhere far off. When Jack walked away from camp to gather firewood, he noticed a shape standing between two birch trunks about 50 yards ahead. His first instinct was black bear. He froze, slowed his breathing, and waited for it to drop to all fours and move off. It didn't. It rose. Whatever had been crouched in the brush stood up to its full height, and Jack realized it was far taller than any bear he had ever seen. He managed to take 3 quick photos before the creature released a low, guttural growl that he felt in his chest. A sound that seemed to come from every direction at once. Then it turned and crashed back into the forest, breaking branches as it went. The noise faded over several seconds before the woods went completely silent again. Jack and his father packed up before sunrise the next morning and left without finishing the trip. They barely spoke on the way out. Later, Jack said what stayed with him wasn't the growl. It was the moment before it, when the creature stood up and he realized it had been watching him the entire time. Another TikTok group, El Patron Marquez, shared footage from deep in the Oklahoma woods. They had returned at night to retrieve trail cameras from a remote area. The air was cold and the forest felt wrong. No insects, no movement. The kind of silence that settles in only when something large has come through and the smaller animals have not decided it is safe to make sound. As they walked, they found scattered animal bones across the ground, cracked open and stripped clean. Something had been feeding there. In the distance, a large shape stood between the trees, completely still. When they reached their camera and reviewed the footage, a deer passed calmly in front of the lens. Seconds later, an upright figure entered the frame, broad, long-armed, moving with slow, deliberate weight. Then, the video ended. The remains on the ground suggested whatever lived there was not passing through. It was feeding, and it was still there when they arrived. In January 2025, a man stepped outside his rural home to check game trails after fresh snow had fallen. Instead of deer tracks, he found massive humanoid footprints, about 16 inches long, spaced more than 40 inches apart. The stride alone ruled out any human, even at a full sprint. That same night, he went outside again and noticed two glowing points at the edge of the tree line, eyes fixed on him, unblinking. The figure stood there in complete silence, watching him and his dogs for several minutes, before slowly stepping backward into the trees and disappearing. The YouTube channel Sasquatch Theory later shared his footage. Since then, the man says he regularly hears wood knocking coming from the forest after dark, single sharp strikes, sometimes answered from another direction, further out. The rhythm of two intelligences communicating across a distance and a tree line. Something out there knows where he lives and keeps returning. It knew the camera was there. On November 22nd, 2025, a police dash cam reportedly captured a large, hair-covered figure crossing a dark forest road. It walked straight through the vehicle's headlights without reacting. No hesitation, no change in speed. No shielding of the eyes against the high beams the way a deer or a coyote will. The officer behind the wheel was close enough to see the swing of its arms and the heel-to-toe weight of each step. Deputies in Washington, Oregon, and Northern California have reported nearly identical sightings during nighttime patrols near national forests. Most never file official reports. They know what that could do to their careers. But the stories keep appearing. Different departments, different years, different roads. Always the same figure. A TikTok user exploring a remote trail alone at night recorded audio that has since been replayed millions of times. From the darkness ahead came a sound. Not quite a howl, not quite a scream. A layered resonance that felt almost human. Almost like a voice compressed into a single sustained cry. The video cut off seconds later. And then there is the encounter that shifts everything. In 2025, the YouTube channel Strange Wilderness released footage from a national park campground that may be among the most unsettling ever recorded. Two campers reported seeing a hunched, upright creature moving near their tent after dark. Its shoulders were massive, its arms hung low. It walked with a slow, swaying motion that covered ground effortlessly. Terrified, they contacted park wardens and made a decision that proved crucial. They set up a trail camera along the path leading from the parking area back to their campsite. When wardens arrived and searched the surrounding forest with flashlights, they found nothing. No tracks, no disturbed ground, no sign that anything had been there at all. The campers started to question what they had witnessed. The warden assured them it was likely a bear and headed back toward his vehicle alone. The trail camera remained active. What it recorded is not easy to dismiss. Roughly 20 yards behind the warden, the same figure moved through the darkness. It matched his pace exactly. When he slowed, it slowed. When he continued, it continued. It stayed within the shadows between the trees, following the same route, gradually closing the distance. As it approached the trail camera, something shifted. It stopped. It turned its head toward the lens. Then, slowly and with intent, it stepped back and retreated into the forest. It didn't run. It didn't react in panic. It recognized the camera. It understood what it was. And it chose to leave before more could be captured. This isn't the behavior of an animal that wandered too close to a campsite. This is calculated movement. This is a creature that knew it was following a person, knew it was being recorded, and made a deliberate decision to withdraw. A bear does not mirror a human's pace through the dark. A person in a costume does not appear twice in the same campground in a single night. Evade trained wardens during a full search, and then show awareness of surveillance equipment. Whatever moved behind that warden in the trees was intelligent. It was controlled. Every trail you've ever walked runs through territory that isn't truly yours. Every forest you've crossed at dusk. Every moment you paused because something felt off, but you couldn't explain why. Every time you looked back into the trees and saw nothing, consider that nothing may not have been empty at all. Something was there, standing just beyond sight. It simply chose not to be seen. And based on what these cameras are capturing, it's getting better at deciding when to stay hidden and when to step into view. Subscribe now. New footage surfaces almost every week and disappears just as fast. Sometimes within days, sometimes within hours. The channel exists to break it down before it is pulled, because what these cameras are capturing is not slowing down, it is getting closer.